Week 17, we got playoff implications, we got roster bonuses, we got incentives. Welcome to the full game breakdowns. If you're new here, you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these every single week for the Thursday night game, the Monday night game, the biggest games on Sunday, and now we got Saturday games, Christmas games, Wednesday games. Make sure you join the family if you have not already. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of this content, especially as the playoffs roll around. You do not want to miss out on any of this. If you've been here before, welcome back. I appreciate you coming back. Make sure you leave a like if any of these videos have ever helped you in the past, or if you found this information valuable. It helps me out a ton if you do that. Let's talk about these games. We're going to break down Dallas, Philly. We're going to break down Minnesota, Green Bay. We're going to break down Atlanta, Washington, the Sunday night game, and then give a brief breakdown for the remainder of the Sunday games at the end. Before we do, though, I want to make sure you guys can find all my picks and predictions for these games if you don't know where to get them already. So there are links in the description for all of this stuff. All of my player picks, the Loeb's lay, the parlay, everything like that will be on Instagram. If you're not following Instagram, that is the best place to stay updated with me and all of my stuff. You absolutely need to make sure you are following there. If you want my live picks, my more fun picks, touchdown scores, things like that, that is all on X. Again, a link for that is below as well. If you're looking for bonus cash to make these picks with, Sleeper, Underdog, and Better Picks are all going to give you some bonus cash and a free pick if you join with code LEAD. Sleeper is going to give you a half-yard special and 11 free additional entries after your first entry. Underdog is going to give you a deposit bonus up to $1,000, and Better Picks is going to match your first deposit up to $200. Again, all that stuff is in the link in the description. If you are looking to follow my picks as they go, see how I've done in the past and the future, all that good stuff, that is also on Pickit. If you're on Pickit and you're not following, make sure you do. Everything is public so you guys can see it. All of that stuff is in the description. Without further ado, let's get into these games. We're going to start with Dallas at Philadelphia. Right now, the Eagles are 7.5-point favorites. Truthfully, I'm staying away from that, but Kenny Pickett's starting. Kenny Pickett's the quarterback, and as you look at data outliers, it's very important because Dallas has given up the 7th most receptions and 7th most yards to opposing wide receivers. Now, I am truthfully not worried about A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith's production without Jalen Hurts. I don't think it's this complete detonation. We can look at some past games to see, really the past game, one game, against this Washington Commanders team. It didn't make a huge difference to me when I was looking at it. A.J. Brown had almost 100 yards, and Kenny Pickett was playing the majority of the snaps. Devontae Smith had 6 for 51 against a defense that's actually been pretty good against wide receivers really all year long. These are the two main guys. We know that. No other receivers really rival their production in the pass game, but those are the two main guys. Truthfully, I trust A.J. Brown a little bit more than I trust with Devontae Smith this week. Dallas is pretty balanced in terms of coverage, man, zone, but the target rate is not balanced. They're giving up the 7th most targets to the outside, and as a lot of you guys probably know, Eagles throw to the outside at a very high rate, actually the highest rate in the NFL. They play a little more middle field close, so you'll see more cover 3 and cover 1 from them than 4, 2, 6, whatever, all that good stuff. But I am looking at A.J. Brown yards this week. We can look at the game logs one more time. You see with Kenny Pickett, it was 8 for 97 and a touchdown. Right now, his projection is 66 yards. Dallas has allowed the number one to go above 66 in 11 of 15 games, and in 9 of 11 healthy games for A.J. Brown because he got injured. When did he get injured? I believe it, Jacksonville game. 9 of 11 healthy games, full games for A.J. Brown. He's had at least 66 yards. The interesting thing here, though, his longest catch is 23 yards, and he's an explosive player, obviously. Is Kenny Pickett going to air the ball out down the field? I don't know. I'm not convinced, but he has that in 8 of 11 games, and he had 109 yards last time they played Dallas. You can see right here, or sorry, that's the Rams. Last time they played Dallas, where is it at? Right there, 5 for 109. So 109 both, but 5 for 109 last time they played Dallas, and obviously Devontae Smith, only 2 for 14. Dotson had a catch in that game, more yards than Smith, so I feel more comfortable with A.J. Brown in that game. If the Eagles are winning, they're going to continue to lean into Saquon, and Saquon is pretty much matchup proof. But based on the data, I'm not going to just lean into Saquon blindly. Cowboys are giving up the 19th most attempts, so 13th fewest attempts to opposing running backs, and are above average in terms of overall rush yards given up. They've played a lot better against the run since Micah Parsons has been back. On the other side, Eagles are pretty solid really all around, but they give up a ton of slot targets. 6th highest slot target rate in the NFL, and the Cowboys, especially with Cooper Rush, are throwing to the slot at the 7th highest rate. CeeDee Lamb was the main slot guy. That's the issue here. But when you look at the Cowboys slot wide receivers or pass catchers without CeeDee Lamb, it's Jalen Tolbert, whose projections are not out yet, which stinks. That's why you guys got to make sure you're following on Instagram and Twitter. I will absolutely put everything out on there. He is the next slot guy in line, had 1.37 yards per out run in the slot, which is really good, and 0.18 targets per out run. So that's a target pretty much every 5 routes, which is pretty solid. It's a good number. Jake Ferguson is the other slot guy, though. He has 0.18 targets per out run as well, very similar to Tolbert, same number, and then 1.25 yards per out run. Now, the Eagles are very good, or have been very good against tight ends, but you can look at some of the past performances. They've allowed good tight ends to have decent floors against them. So if you look at game logs against the Philadelphia Eagles here, decent floors for these tight ends against them. Like back to Mark Andrews, 6 for 67. Even Isaiah Likely had 38 yards. A guy like Zach Ertz, 6 for 47. Ferguson had 4 for 24 last time they played, but remember, CeeDee Lamb was in the lineup in that game. Now he is not. Evan Engram had 45 yards. Gesicki had 73. K. Dotton had 52. You can look at David Njoku if you want. I mean, that was a Deshaun Watson game. And Tucker Kraft at 37. They haven't had a ton of super elite tight ends go against them. And I'm not saying Jake Ferguson is, but in terms of, yardage, in terms of overall production throughout the entire game, in a game where I think Dallas is probably going to be losing, you can water Ferguson down, actually put something together. And if I am writing exactly this, again, this will be on Instagram, but for anybody who's looking for an SGP in this game, like Eagles to win, A.J. Brown 50 yards, and then Jake Ferguson 25-plus yards is at plus 142 right now. Like, that's a good number for me, plus value, and I love all three of those picks. So that's what I'm looking at in Dallas, Philly. Let's move to the second game. We're going to move pretty fast through these games to make sure everybody stays involved here. Second game, Green Bay, Minnesota. Now, last time these guys played, it was Jordan Love's first game back from injury, I believe. He missed 3 or 4 games with the injury. But there's pretty solid trends on both sides. And it's actually the same in terms of coverage. They both play a ton of zone. Packers are playing, I believe it's the 4th most, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, Minnesota's playing the 6th most zone in the NFL. So it's a lot of zone, different types of zone, but a lot of zone. And Green Bay is giving up the 9th most receptions and 8th most yards to opposing tight ends. And on the other side, they're also giving up the 6th most receptions and 6th most yards to opposing running backs. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on Aaron Jones and his receiving production. I'll pull that up for you really quick. But before we talk about that, TJ Hawkinson to me is always the guy, 41 yards. And we can go look at some game logs for him as well. But TJ Hawkinson will always be the guy against zone. That's the reality. I think they're going to do everything they can to stop Justin Jefferson. He had a good game against them. I believe it was like 6 for 90 last time they played. But they're going to do everything they can to stop Justin Jefferson. And that is the bottom line with that defense. They're going to do everything they can to take away your number one. But I want to look at TJ Hawkinson because he's been very good since he's come back. We talked about 41 yards, right? Seattle's a more man-heavy team at 27 yards. What are you going to do? Chicago's zone-heavy, 52. Atlanta, zone-heavy, 45. Arizona, balanced. Chicago, again, zone-heavy, 114. Tennessee, balanced. Jacksonville's man-heavy needed 72, which is interesting. Then Indy, in his first game back, had 27. So TJ Hawkinson is becoming a very good option in the pass game. When you look at the Green Bay Packers, they are bottom 10 in terms of running back yards allowed and running back attempts allowed. Minnesota's throwing the ball at a high rate. They're going to have to throw the football. And I think TJ Hawkinson, again, I don't love 41 straight, but if you want to water it down 25 plus and pair it with 1 or 2 other things, that's what I really like. Aaron Jones, though. Packers run the 3rd most zone, And Jones has 4 times as many targets versus zone as he does against man. Now, you look at the target rates. Green Bay is getting targeted out of the backfield at the 3rd highest rate. Minnesota is not throwing the ball to running backs a ton, though. That's what worries me. Bottom 5 in running back target rate, but Aaron Jones only projected 19 receiving yards. And you can look at some of the games for Aaron Jones. He's had 19 in 9 of 15 games. This guy's been very, very good in the pass game. And again, against these zone-heavy teams, he's been a lot better. Chicago, he had 20. We have Chicago again with 23. Indianapolis, 4 catches, 18 yards, so 1 below, but 4 catches, plenty of volume. Rams, 37. We had the Green Bay Packers, 4 for 46 in the prior game. Houston's pretty balanced. San Francisco, a little more zone heavy, 36. Like, he's getting involved in the pass game really all year long, but especially against those zone heavy teams. Like we talked about, 4 times as many targets against zone compared to man. In 8 of his 15 games, he's hit his catch projection, which is 3. I would lean yards and explosive plays before I lean catches, but truthfully, guys, I think both will be okay in this game. But when you look at the opponent game logs in 8 of 15 games, the Green Bay Packers have allowed that 3+ catch number to opposing running backs. But in 10 of 15 games, they've allowed that 19+ receiving yard number. So it's been more frequent with the yardage compared to the catches. So I like that a lot. On the other side, Minnesota, great against the run. I mean, they're good against the pass, but that's where all the volume is. So they're giving up the second most attempts and the third most pass yards in the NFL, as well as the most receptions and yards to opposing wide receivers. I look at Jordan Love's passing numbers. I mean, Minnesota's allowed 9 of 15 quarterbacks to have either 246 yards or 33 pass attempts. Jordan Love has had 246 yards in 6 of 13 games, so not a ton, and then 33 attempts in 5 of 13 games, so not a ton as well. But in the Packers receiving side, we talked about Vikings giving up the most yards and receptions to opposing wide receivers. They're also being targeted in the slot at a top 10 rate. Last time they played, Jaden Reed had a big game. And I know Jaden Reed's probably on a lot of your guys' banned list. You probably don't like Jaden Reed, but here's the bottom line. Jaden Reed is the guy in the pass game in this game. He is the most targeted, most receptions, most target percentage, highest target percentage, against zone coverage on the Packers. Vikings run the 6th most zone in the NFL. Again, you can look at this game against Minnesota earlier on in the year. 7 for 130 time. 7 for 139 to touchdown. And again, Christian Watson, nothing really. Dontavian Wicks had a good game, but Dobbs, nothing really. Melton, nothing really. Heath, barely plays. But Reed was the guy. And you can even look at Tucker Kraft, 6 for 53 in that game as well, because he is getting targeted a ton in zone coverage. Another thing, if you want to water down, him 25+, Hawkinson 25+. I like that a lot. Kraft, I believe, is projected 36 right now, so not bad. But Reed is the guy. I mean, he has the most targets, like we talked about, 3.07 yards per route run. He's projected 50 yards. Now, he's only hit that in 7 to 15 games. I know, again, probably on a lot of your guys' banned list, quote unquote, but he had 139 last time they played. And you look at slot receivers. 11 of 15 games against the Vikings, the main slot pass catcher has had at least 50 yards. Again, Vikings are very good against the run. They're giving up the third fewest yards and the third fewest overall attempts. So teams don't even try to run the football on them because they stop it so well and they put people in the box. A lot of cover 4, so they'll roll the safeties down a little bit lower in a zone coverage. But nobody wants to run on them. Nobody has been able to run on them, really. So they're going to have to pass the football. To me, I think Jaden Reed yards straight is very good. And that's something that I probably would not even water down. I would just take it because I think he has such a big playability that you just take it. But you look at Kraft watered down, and you look at Hawkinson watered down, and Aaron Jones receiving yards straight as well. I think the Minnesota Vikings win this game. I think Packers are good. I think Minnesota's defense is playing well. They're turning the football over, and they're taking care of the football on the other side. I think this is the better team. They're at home, and I'm trusting a pass attack that has, I think, an edge against zone coverage. We'll see. That's where I'm leaning in that game. I'm not going to take the Green Bay's +1.5 right now. I'm not going to touch that. Not touching the total there either. But let's talk Sunday Night Football. We have the Atlanta Falcons against the Washington Commanders. Now, a couple data outliers here. Atlanta's given up the most receptions to opposing running backs, but are actually in the bottom half in the NFL in terms of yards given up to running backs. 5th most receptions to receivers, 11th most yards to receivers. And then on the other side, Washington is giving up the 13th most rush attempts and 5th most yards. We'll talk Washington in a minute because the injuries are the biggest story with the Commanders. But with the Falcons, again, they're giving up the most receptions to opposing running backs, right? You have to look at Brian Robinson and I guess Jeremy McNichols' production against teams that play a little more zone without Austin Eckler. Remember, they've played, I think, 4 games without Austin Eckler. You look at that production right here. Jeremy McNichols, again, had a big receiving game, 4 for 15 last time they played, but 1 catch without Austin Eckler, or 2 catches, without Austin Eckler in the previous 3 games. You have the New Orleans game, Tennessee game, and obviously this Week 4 game against Arizona. But Brian Robinson Jr. has had 2+ catches in 3 of 4 games without Eckler. Here's the issue. 2+ catches, I looked, it was like -180. So if you want to throw that in a long shot, go ahead, be my guest. I like it, and the numbers like it. But 3 is where the plus value is, and I'm not going to touch it. When you look at his yards, he's projected 13. Hit it in 2 of 4 games without Austin Eckler. Granted, one of those, he had 1 less yard than the projection, but Atlanta has allowed 11 of 15 running backs to have at least 13 yards. So I think it's worth taking a chance on that, especially if Atlanta's going to stop the run, which they've done really, really all year long. 27th most attempts, so 6th fewest attempts, and they're bottom 10 in terms of yards per game. To me, they're going to stop the run and they're going to force the Commanders to pass. It's just a matter of where that is going. Now, they play the 9th most zone coverage. Brian Robinson has double the amount of targets versus zone, and the Falcons are getting targeted out of the backfield at the 2nd highest rate. Commanders aren't throwing the ball in the backfield a ton, but when the options are there, again, more zone opportunities for Robinson. I think catches or yards is very good in this sense. Like I said, though, they're giving up the 5th most receptions to receivers. We can scroll down and look at Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has had 8 of 15 games with his yardage projection this game, so 64 yards, but 10 of 15 games with 5+ catches. That's where his projection is at right now. We talked about Atlanta having more catches than yards. I think you lean catches before yards with Terry McLaurin, especially against zone, but 12 of 15 receivers on both sides have had at least that 64-yard number and 5 catches against the Atlanta Falcons. Only 3 number ones have not hit either of those in those games. So you look at that. I trust Terry McLaurin really on both sides, but I like catches before I like yards. The only issue is his target percentage goes down against zone. Again, Falcons play the 9th most zone. He's getting targeted less against zone. He's still the most targeted player on the Commanders, just less often against zone. Who gets targeted more, though? That's the issue. I'm going to pull up the snap counts for you guys. You look at this. As a lot of you guys may know, Jamison Crowder returned 2 weeks ago. Jamison Crowder, right here. 27 and 46, and then Olamide Zaccheaus, 49 and 69. His snap count's going up with Noah Brown going out. Noah Brown going out has been the big issue here, but Luke McCaffrey has also taken a back seat because Crowder has come back. Now, Zaccheaus has stepped into that role on the outside more, and obviously Dyami Brown has been playing more as well. Dyami Brown's been playing really well, but Zaccheaus has stepped into that role. His projection is 31 yards, 4 catches, actually at plus 120. But truthfully, guys, there's not a ton of trends or strong enough data that makes me think Zaccheaus can repeat what he did, because he's only had 31 yards in 1 of 2 games. He's only had 4. Actually, I don't think he has had 4+ catches, but you can check really quick. I don't think he has had 4+ catches, but he's had 31 yards in, both games. But I don't think there's enough trends where you can look at Zaccheaus and say, okay, yeah, he is going to continue to dominate a secondary, especially when you look at what Jamison Crowder is doing, because that's who I want to talk about. 3 for 27 and 2 for 15 and 2 touchdowns in both games. These were tougher matchups against, again, Philly's balanced, but New Orleans a more man-heavy team, against teams that don't look like the Atlanta Falcons, especially in coverage. Now, Jamison Crowder, his snap count has gone up significantly, obviously, like we saw, especially after the Luke McCaffrey, I don't know, not even benching because he's playing, but he has taken the slot role. And the Falcons are getting targeted in the slot comparatively higher than they are out wide, in the at the inline position, all that good stuff. Since coming back, he has 25 slot routes to McCaffrey's 5. And 8 of his 9 targets this year have come against zone coverage. He has 1 man target. He's not being used against man. Again, that is the biggest drop-off in terms of man versus zone target rate on the Washington Commanders. 21 yards. He's hit it in 1 of 2 games. I think it could genuinely come on 1 play. I think you lean that before you lean Zaccheaus, but I truthfully do like all of them, guys. I think both these teams are going to be able to stop the run. Yes, I said both of them, and force the rest to pass. Now, we talked about the Commanders' defense not being great against the run, and they're not. Giving up the 5th most yards and the 13th most attempts. They had a big game given up against Saquon last week, but here's the issue. The Falcons run the highest percentage of zone runs in the NFL. They barely run man gap. I think it was 88 carries, which is not a ton. The Washington Commanders, holistically, like they're bad against the run. They're middle of the pack against zone. They can stop zone runs. It's the man gap stuff that really, really kills them. Atlanta is 19th in the NFL in zone yards per carry, even though they run it the most, or the highest percentage, They're 19th in the NFL in terms of those zone runs. Now, Atlanta, they're 6th in zone. The Commanders are 6th in zone yards per carry. So there's a marriage there where Atlanta is going to run a lot of zone and Washington's not going to be able, quote unquote, hasn't been able to stop it. But if you guys remember 5 minutes ago, we said injuries were the biggest story here. Jonathan Allen is likely to return for this game. He's currently questionable with a pectoral injury, but he's likely to return for this game and bolster that defensive line. Bijan's yardage projection is 80 yards. He's hit it in 9 of 15 games. But you know what's crazy? As bad as this Commander's defense has been, only 6 running backs have had 90 or 80 plus rushing yards against this team. Longest rush of 17, only 6 of 15 games. 19 carries, only 7 of 15 games. And only 5 backs against this Commanders team have had that. Schematically and past data, I don't love Bijan. It's something you can water down because of how bad the Commanders have been, but I'm calling the bluff a little bit with that. I don't know if he has an explosive game, an enormous game, and I looked at the explosive run percentages. There's nothing really there either. What is there, though, is Drake London. Marshawn Lattimore is out, and Washington is running the 7th most man-to-man in the NFL. London is the man-to-man guy. Yards per out run, targets, target percentage, all that good stuff. And he has a pretty steep drop-off in terms of his targets between man and zone. So he's a more man-heavy guy. He's projected 59 yards. He's had it in 10 of 15 games. I don't care who the quarterback is. And the opponent's number one has had it against the Washington Commanders in 12 of 15. So I look at that and I think, okay, Drake London, all signs point to a potential good game for him. That is what I'm leaning. If I wanted to water things down and put them together in this game, Terry 40 yards, probably Bijan 60 maybe, or 50 or 60. London 40, and I think you'd get a good plus value play that I really like. Let's talk other games very briefly. We'll say the game, we'll say the spread, and we'll say what I like in that game the most. We'll go one pick, except the Browns-Dolphins game has 2. Jets +9 against the Buffalo Bills. I'm not going to be on either side. Dalton Kincaid against man-to-man is what I like the most. The Jets run a ton of man, and they don't get targeted in the outside as much as they do on the inside. Kincaid is an inside guy. I think the Bills win this game. I do think they win pretty handily, but 9, now up to 9.5 is a big number. I'm not touching that. Tennessee versus Jacksonville. Look, I think Tennessee wins this game. Right now they're +1. You can take them on the money line if you'd like to, but Ridley versus man-to-man is another thing where Jacksonville plays so much man. He had a ton of targets last time they played, but he wasn't able to produce. Now Mason Rudolph in, maybe that changes things, but Tennessee legitimately self-sabotaged themselves last time they played, and they almost won the game. They lost, I think, 10-6. They're going to score more than 6 points this week. Las Vegas, New Orleans. I'm just going to be on Vegas -1, to be honest with you guys. New Orleans, even though they're at home, they're without Carr and Kamara again. The defense is playing better, but there's not enough offensively, even with Chris Olave potentially back, to overcome that. Now, Chris Olave against man coverage is another thing I like to lean into, but I don't know how much he's going to play. I don't know if there's going to be a snap count on Chris Olave. I'm going to stay away and just take the Raiders in this game, to be honest with you. Carolina, Tampa. Look, Carolina played them really tough last time. Carolina's playing good football. There is no world that they should be 8.5-point underdogs here with Cade Otton, Sterling Shepard, and Antoine Winfield out. There's no way. It should not be the case. I might take them straight. Truthfully, in my upset video, I picked them to win, but I'm taking them +8.5. That, to me, it just seems like a crazy spot. They're 6-2 in terms of one-possession games since the Bryce Young return, 6-2 against the spread, and again, they went overtime last time they played this Bucs team. Very could easily have won, too, so I'm not even touching that. Colts -7.5 against the Giants. I don't mind that 7.5 number. I would not go Giants +7.5. To me, you go Jonathan Taylor rush yards here, regardless of who's playing quarterback. And honestly, regardless of what the number is, he's red hot, and this Giants run defense is very bad. So I think Jonathan Taylor rush yards is the way to go here. And then Miami and Cleveland. 2 things here. I don't mind the Miami 6.5 number. Hold on one second here. They are currently 6.5-point favorites in this game. I don't mind that, but 2 things I really like. Tyreek Hill, longest catch, especially against man-to-man coverage. Big explosive plays could be coming. And then Jerome Ford through the air. Receptions and receiving yards. Miami plays a ton of zone, give up a ton of receptions and receiving yards to opposing running backs. And the Browns do not have David Njoku and Cedric Tillman. DTR likes to check the ball down, extend plays, all that good stuff. That is what I like in that game. That is what I like in all the games. But I appreciate you guys watching. We will have a Monday Night Football breakdown for a very, very important playoff implication game, between the Lions and the Niners. We'll have that Sunday afternoon out. So again, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you have notifications on if you want to see that video right away. And if you enjoyed this video and the data, make sure you leave a like. Again, all the plays will be on Instagram and X below. Bonus cash in that third link. God bless you guys, and we will see you Sunday afternoon. Have a great Sunday.